This is Bunbury Brandywine, today talking about the Looney Bin in Arkham Underworld as a part of our subscribers suggested series discussing the different defensive troop types and how to best place them and use them in your base. So let's jump straight into the Looney Bin, which is full of machete-wielding madmen who will continuously charge intruders. Here's the big one, even in adjacent rooms. Now we're going to focus our discussion on that because there are a few things that, even though you probably know this by default, there are a few things that may not have been quite so obvious. They weren't to me. So first thing is, let's get the really straightforward, obvious stuff out of the way. You have to have a doorway like this that's open and it allows people to pass through, or no door there at all. They're not going to go through a closed door, period. They will never enter this room in this situation. So instead, I have either a security door trap or an open door, an open little hallway there. And now they have access to this room. So if I wanted to force them to only come into this room or stay in this room, I of course could have put a door there. Or if you wanted to force them to wait a while, you can create a barrier so that they have no line of sight to this door, and even when troops enter this area, they will do nothing. They won't respond at all until you break this barrier. So that means one of the barricades has to go down. Now, in my case, I don't like the fact that is happening, because by the time they do break the barricade, they've probably already taken out my guard post and/or they've done a ton of work on my auto turret, which defeats the whole purpose of what I want them to do in my defensive strategy. So that's why I have this one turned sideways presently. I will ultimately change the whole layout. It's doing pretty good, but just to maximize these two characters who do respond to other rooms, I really need to make sure that they have the line of sight. The other thing is your attackers are going to look for a window that has easy access to the Looney Bin. So sticking them deeply nestled in your base is probably a good idea, because sending a remote control explosive in after them is a very quick way to not only blow up the bin, but all of the characters around it, so all of the madmen around it. Now, why would they want to do that? One thing that I'm sure you've noticed, but if you didn't, once these characters die, a little timer shows up above the Looney Bin itself, and it will spawn another madman every time one of the madmen dies, so that there is always a third madman on the loose somewhere. And he's going to, of course, respond to the nearest character that he can attack. Now, this is good news to you, but again, timing is everything. So I just want to reinforce that if you want them to show up down here and do damage down here, I really need to have the Looney Bin closer, because as soon as one of them is shot down, the next guy has a little while that he waits for him to spawn, and then he has to run down here, and then he has to run down. By the time he's down here and replenishing the supplies of troops, it's kind of already too late. It's like 4 or 5 seconds have passed, and I guarantee you the auto turret's down, the guard post is down. So this is another thing to keep in mind. How quickly will the Looney Bin, or the madmen, how quickly will they respond to a threat in the other room? So placing them, for example, if I were to take this entire room and place it down here, that might be a more appropriate solution, so that they very quickly can enter the other room. That has all sorts of other implications, which is why I don't have it down there presently. But that's more what I'll be driving towards in the future of this build out. The very last thing that I do want to discuss with the Looney Bin, let's take a look at the health and the DPS. This represents the health for each individual troop and the DPS for each individual troop, not the bin itself. The bin is pretty squishy. Honestly, I don't know. It could be that's also, the bin also has a similar amount of health. There aren't two health items, because one is the loon and one is the actual bin. Everyone has 2 lines of health right now, and I don't understand what's going on with that. But so why do I know that their health is 428? Well, The only other character that I have that survives gassing, but just barely, are the level 7 sentries that I have, and they have 411. So the fact that they both just barely survive, they have very similar amounts of health. So if you didn't know, you're not looking at the bin's health, you're looking at the individual troops that are popping out, which is kind of helpful to know. So the more you upgrade it, obviously, the better they will interact with the environment, and they will fight more fiercely and survive a little bit longer. But really, more than anything, they're a swarm troop. You're looking for distraction. So use them in such a way that they can cause distraction and mayhem. And you want to use that psychology to distract and confuse the attacker, the actual player, so that they feel like they have to rush in here. If you're attacking, I would say the Looney Bin's really not that big of a deal. You can kind of let them trickle out troops so long as you're not in crisis. I like the fact that they are first introduced to my lunatics in this room because they're in crisis. The attackers are in crisis with the auto turret. They're staring down the barrel of an auto turret and a number of other pretty hefty troops. I do feel like it adds an element of psychology to the game where people panic. The only person who's done really, really well thus far with this attack, and by the way, I use Harley in this setup, the only person who's done really, really well tried about 6 times before they really, really let themselves go for it. They had their supervillains captured, etc., etc. So, what that tells me is that it's doing pretty well, but I think there's some tightening up that could be had. So, anywho, let us know what you thought of the video, and/or if you have any tips or tricks of your own for the Looney Bin. It's really one of the first units that we've covered that has a lot of diversity in the way it can be played and the way it can be used strategically. So please let us know. The community always appreciates that. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe so that we can see you in future videos soon.